who are doing a very remarkable work. So I was glad to join the people in Viwandani, and later we came to join also the celebration in Kamango, which was also successful, and we were happy to have APHRC and all other stakeholders together. So thank you.
Thank you, James. So sorry, I'm having a bit of a connection challenge, but hopefully I'm in for good now. Wanted to invite an APHRC team member who would like to share, if possible, about how the World Environment Day celebration was for you and your team yesterday. Maybe welcome either Dr. Liz or Dr. Beatrice.
Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth Kimani Murage. I work with the African Population and Health Research Center. So as James said yesterday, we had joint celebrations with a coffee. We had some events in one of our settings here in Nairobi at a place called Viwandani. And then we also had celebrations in another place, a rural place called Kamango. And we had very good activities. I attended the ones for Kamango, and we had great activities, great community participation. We had a march with children, marching for the environment. And then we had some cleanup because yesterday was about beating the plastic pollution. So really cleaning up and removing the plastics from the environment, but really creating awareness about the harms that the plastics do to the environment and to the human health. And then we also had tree planting fruit trees, as James mentioned. That was done in both Viwandani and Kamango. So really planting fruit trees, which serve different purposes. They have climate benefits, so they have climate and health co-benefits. They have climate benefits in terms of sequestration of carbon, but also they have the health benefits in terms of improving diets. But also they are good for, they clean the air, they provide shade. So really that's great, and feed the people. And then we also had the climate fresk. For me, that was the highlight. I was very impressed by climate fresk. I don't know whether everyone here knows about climate fresk. If you Google it, you'll find it. It's really a good way to train people in a very simple way about climate change, how it happens, from all the processes, from the human activity, and how it really impacts on human health at the end, the consequences of it. So it's something that people here, hopefully they can also engage with. I was very, very impressed, and I think that's a very good way of engaging communities with climate information, which is usually very complex, but the climate fresk makes it very, very easy to digest for people, for lay people. Yeah, thank you. So thank you so much, Akofi, for coordinating everything, and also the APHRC team that supported or that engaged, that were involved in the activities. We look forward to doing more of these kind of activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liz. And on behalf of ACOFI and also the community group under the umbrella of the abbreviation NAHE, the NDEA Alliance for Health, Environment, and Education, we want to greatly appreciate APHRC for the support that you gave to make that wonderful program possible. So we welcome everyone to share ideas about ways that we can continue connecting and accelerating the positive momentum. One of the theories of change that we have is that aligning with the UN calendar, where there are global dates of significance, that we do our best to open up virtual spaces where we can talk about the positive community-centered activities that we're doing together. And just to briefly mention the calendar moving forward, on the 7th of July, using Swahili, this is called Saba Saba Day. This is the World Kiswahili Day. And so just a few days before that, on the 4th of July, will be the first Friday in July. So we're planning to have our next First Friday global gathering during that period. And we're planning to focus on culture and community, language, and tradition as important mechanisms to reconnect to our specific roots, the stories of self, stories of place, and how important that is to have hope and to amplify positive change in the modern world. So I've posted in the chat a link to the bio for Dr. Beatrice. So before she begins, I'll just briefly read some of the highlights of who she is and what she does at APHRC. So she's a research scientist in the Nutrition and Food Systems Unit. She has expertise addressing the interlinkages between climate change, food systems, nutrition, and health. She supports various projects, including the Zero Hunger Initiative, the Wellcome Funded PEIS project, also the Sea Chefs project, and an AfriFood Links project. She has a PhD in nutrition and household economics from a university in Germany, along with a master's in food science from Kenyatta University. Prior to joining APHRC, she was a senior lecturer at JQuat for over 18 years, and so is a relatively recent addition to the APHRC team. Welcome, Beatrice, to tell us more about climate and health in Africa through the lens of food and nutrition. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Nathan, for that introduction. And I'm really happy to be here this afternoon. And I'm going to try and see whether my slides can share. Let me see whether I can be able to share my slides so that, yes, let's see. Are you able to see my slides?
Yes.
Are you able to see my slides?
Yeah.
Good. I want to share my slides just to be sure that yes, I think this is okay now. Can be able to. Yes, so thank you very much. I hope that you can all see my slides. So as you've heard, my name is Beatrice Ffgg, and I work at APHRC, and I work in the Nutrition and Food Systems Unit as a research scientist. And I'm really glad to be here this afternoon with all of you. And really, I must say thank you so much, like from the people in Kenya, because I know that today is supposed to be a public holiday, but the fact that you have chosen to be here, it means that this is a matter that is very, very dear to your hearts. So this afternoon, I'm going to talk about climate change and health in Africa. And I'm doing this through the lens of food and nutrition. And just to start, I'd like to say that when you look at climate change in Africa, and even globally, really, it poses one of the greatest threats to global health, and Africa included. And nowhere is this impact being felt more profoundly than here in Africa, where we find that our food system, our nutrition, and our human well-being are deeply interlinked and are interconnected. So we have issues of rising temperatures, we have erratic rainfalls, we have seen that happening extreme weather events, be it floods, be it drought and all that. And all these really are affecting our productivity as you know, in this part of the planet. And of course, this affects our food availability and also affects or compromises our nutritional quality. And really, when all these things are happening due to climate change, they are worsening our, you know, our malnutrition levels, be it undernutrition. And right now we are seeing overnutrition coming in, and even the aspect of non-communicable diseases, which are very closely linked to overnutrition. So, as I've already said, the link between climate change, food systems, and health is very complex. And this, of course, as I've said, it affects our food and nutrition security and even people's well-being. And therefore, that is why this afternoon we're here to try and understand or unpack these interlinkages and see, for example, where do we come up with strategies that can be able to have impacts to build our resilience, you know, as a continent. Just to talk a little bit about what food security is. Food security, if I can define it using the high-level panel of experts definition of 2020, it has 6 dimensions. And just to say it in brief, it is a situation whereby, you know, all people at all times, and mark that all people, so meaning that whether you're young or old, and at all times. So it doesn't mean that maybe in January or February you have food, the other time you don't have food. So at all times have physical, so the food is there. It's available, you can access it, yeah? And they also have social and economic access, not only to sufficient food, but safe and nutritious food. And also it should be able to meet all your preferences and also the dietary needs for an active and healthy life. So those are basically the 6 dimensions of food security that have been, you know, highlighted by the high-level panel of experts. So those 6 dimensions of accessibility, utilization, availability, sustainability, and that's why we're talking about climate change here, because we are consuming food or producing food in ways that is not sustainable. Agency, do we have a choice on what we're producing, what we're eating? Stability, very, very important. So just to take you forward to the state of food insecurity in Africa. So according to the SOFI report of 2024, so that is very recent, about 868 million people globally are faced with either moderate food insecurity or even severe, you know, food insecurity. And when it comes to severe food insecurity, about more than 300 people actually are faced with severe food insecurity. And the saddest thing is that most of the, you know, like about more than 20% of our population in Africa is faced with hunger. So that is actually telling us, like, if you were to take 5 people, 1 in every 5 people are actually faced with this, with hunger. And one of the major drivers of this food insecurity in Africa, among other things, conflict, economic instability, all that, is climate change. Looking at the nutrition situation in Africa, we find that when we compare ourselves to the global statistics, we are higher than the global statistics, because looking at stunting, which is really chronic malnutrition, that stands at almost 31%. And this is really higher than the global average, which is at 22%. Looking at wasting, yes, we may say it's a bit lower than the global average of 6.7, but it's something that we need to think about. And then looking at, you know, like micronutrient deficiencies like anemia and vitamin A deficiencies, they're also quite high. Looking at anemia, which is deficiency of iron in women of reproductive age, for example, it is more than 40%. And then now we are also thinking about the rising, you know, overweight and obesity, and especially in the urban areas. So let's just look at how climate change, for example, affects the nutritional quality of the foods that we are eating. You know, when we have, for example, elevated carbon dioxide levels this definitely reduces the content of very important, nutrients in our staple foods. Looking at wheat, we all love our mandazis, we love our chapatis. Looking at the rice, our pilaus, all that we're eating, maize, ugali, one thing you should notice that the ugali you're eating right now has less of this, the zinc, the iron, the protein. And these are micronutrients and also macronutrients that are very important when it comes to nutrition. Because when looking at zinc, studies show that climate change affects zinc and reduces it by about 10%, iron 5%, and our protein by 8%. Then we keep on telling ourselves that why do we still have problems, for example, of stunting in Africa? Why is it higher than the global, rates? And it's because of some of these things which are happening right now. And you see, sometimes those ones who live in Kenya, we may tell ourselves that, okay, we moved according to the KDHS 2022, we moved from 26% to 18%. We are not yet home, because you're looking at maybe like in every 100 children, about almost 20 or 18 children are not going to grow to attain their full mental capacities, because when stunting comes in, it also even affects the cognitive development of children. So we need to look at climate change. And the people who are affected a lot by these, by these climate change effects are children and also pregnant women. And this is because they are more susceptible and they have higher nutrient needs compared, for example, to the other population. And also the elderly. Sometimes we don't even look at the elderly too. But this is another population that we forget about. But they are really, really suffering from the, from the effects of climate change. And families, of course, that live in low income, low income families, because they are left with no other choice than to go for example, low cost, high calorie foods. And this is also making their, making them to have overweight and obesity. And that is happening a lot. For example, if you look at the urban areas, like even in Kenya, it will be easy for someone to go for a chapati that's being sold by the roadside because it's cheaper than going to look for a meal and cook it. And you can't really blame somebody. It's because of what is happening right now. And then when we look at Africa, what is contributing to all this climate change? Yeah, we have a lot of global warming, or warming that is really, happening in Africa. And we have a lot of droughts, because if we look at, for example, between 2020 and 2023, looking at Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, and that is where we fall. And there was a lot of drought that happened, which destroyed a lot of crops and even livestock. And there were also extreme weather events that happened. There was flooding, there were cyclones that were also, realized in other places, like even South Africa. And one thing we need to know is that when climate change happens, it also even worsens soil degradation and even reduces the amount of water which is available for us to be able to grow crops. So looking at, climate change, food security, and nutrition, these interactions are very complex. And when you look at that, is that, these interactions are really working multi-directionally and even in various pathways. And when we find somebody, for example, when you have existing malnutrition or food security, climate change comes in and worsens that. And also, it also predisposes, of course, people to undernutrition. And when people are undernourished, that impairs their health. And even their adaptive abilities is also impaired. Because, for example, if someone is undernourished, they're not able to, for example, even have sufficient strength, for example, to then cook for their families, even work in the farms. And this really goes on and on. Yeah. And both climate change, the impacts of climate change, and even the nutritional, the negative nutritional outcomes that I've talked about, they actually are more felt in fragile places that have conflicts. And we have a lot of conflicts that happen in Africa and even at the Horn of Africa, and climate change is actually making these things worse. So when it comes to, I've said that when we have climate change, of course, this increases, our vulnerability to various diseases, because, of course, our food, remember I said that the amount of nutrients is impacted negatively. we don't have sufficient food. And what does that do? It also makes sure that it actually causes us to have lowered immunity. So we are more susceptible to illnesses, and mortality, morbidity goes high. And of course, the issues of water scarcity comes in, sanitation, and that is where we find that, like when we have even flooding and all that, we find that we're having issues like cholera outbreaks and even other waterborne diseases. And remember, all these are coming, and yet we are still dealing with undernutrition and other issues that we have not dealt with. Then the other thing that sometimes we don't remember is the aspect of mental health. Because with effects of climate change, that really leads to people being depressed, anxious. You're wondering, where am I going to get food to feed my child? Flooding has come, where am I going to move my family to? Those are mental health issues that affect people across board. Even the youth are not spared. And yet we don't think about them. And also these displacements that happen. Maybe there's flooding, so you have to move to higher places, or maybe there's drought, so you have to move to look for pasture for your cattle, or somewhere where there's food. All these things, affects you in a very negative way. So when we look at this climate change, agriculture, and health, they actually have what we call a vicious cycle. In that, when we have, for example, extreme heat, you have flooding, you have droughts. Of course, this, as I've said, it disrupts any farming that you're doing. So you're not going to be able to produce, for example, if you're producing like 10 bags of maize in this piece of land, you'll not be able to produce that because flooding came, destroyed all your crops. Or maybe the crops on the farm and then the rains failed. So of course, the crop will not produce the way it's supposed to have produced. You're going to lose your animals and all that. And of course, all this will cause food shortages, because if you're not producing food as you should have done, you're going to have food shortages. This causes malnutrition and even reproductive health problems that are actually related to, to heat stress. Women start having, problems with, losing their babies, their pregnancies and all that. And, productivity is impacted negatively, and the vicious cycle goes on and on. If we take a look, for example, at, we take a look at maybe the Horn of Africa, just as a case study, like according to a report by the World Bank and also the Concern Worldwide, like in the year 2023, this, if you look at 2023 to 2024, this part of the world was hit by the worst drought than what was seen in the last 40 years. There was very bad drought in 1981, but this was really bad, and it affected Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia. And it affected about 36 million people who face severe food insecurity. And also, when you look at these people who face severe food insecurity, about 900,000 of them actually were in emergency situations, so they had to get help. And then this also affected also in places like even Burkina Faso, even Mali. And if we look at, like a place like South Africa, because moving away from Kenya, moving to a place like South Africa, we find that, El Nino-induced droughts, which were between October 2023 and March 2024, they significantly affected agriculture, and this caused, of course, massive or widespread crop failures. And when it came to, at that particular point, we find that over 24 million people in this place in Southern Africa face severe risks of hunger, malnutrition, water scarcity, and the government had to come in to respond. And that is where you find that governments of Southern Africa, like Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe, they actually were forced to declare a state of disaster, meaning that, people were hungry, so something had to be done. The world had to come in and assist in this particular situation. So having talked about that, it's important that we look at what adaptation and mitigation strategies we should be able to employ, because climate change is here with us, but we can't just sit pretty and say that there's nothing we're going to do. That is why we need to look at what are some of the adaptation strategies we should embrace? What are some of the mitigation strategies? And I'll just highlight a few, like climate smart agriculture, whereby you adopt drought-resistant crops and even sustainable practices like agroecology. Such that if, for example, drought comes in, you're not going to have all your crop lost. You're going to have at least something remaining in your farm that can keep you going until the harvest can be better. If I would just speak a little bit more about agroecology, because this is one of the issues that we really like advocate for, signature issues at APHRC. Agroecology is a sustainable farming approach, and it tries to mimic natural ecosystems, whereby it tries to combine, science and traditional knowledge. And also it has the aspect of social equity and even enhancing how we produce our food, how we make sure that we take care of biodiversity and also climate resilience. And it has things to do with like even agroforestry is there, crop diversity is there, looking at even how do we take care of our soil and so forth. And other strategies that we should be looking at is looking at how do we improve storage? Because yes, we know that a lot of food is produced when, for example, that we have a glut in terms of harvest, but we lose about 30% of that because we have poor storage. So we need to come up with ways to improve the way we store our food. How do we transport this food? We lose it along the way. We should also come up with irrigation systems, because we can't continue relying on rainfall because sometimes it is not reliable. How can we be able to use irrigation to be able to grow crops even when we don't have sufficient rainfall? Then also we need like policy interventions, very important, whereby we should have policy that strengthen the safety net. So it's like that when the crops are failing, we have something that can keep the people going. And also we should invest more in healthcare, so that we take care, for example, of the health of those vulnerable members that I've talked about. And also we need international support, whereby we need like collaborative efforts that we can be able to provide funding and even technical assistance to this part of the world. And I just want to go a little bit more on agroecology, because I say that this is one of the ways that we can be able to even transform our food systems in Africa and be able to, deal with the issue of climate change. And agroecology can contribute to food security because, as I said before, it can promote diverse, resilient farming systems. Because, for example, in your intercropping, so you find that if one crop fails, you can be able to go to the other. Agroforestry, whereby, for example, the trees can be used to be able to, suck the carbon dioxide that is produced in the air, and that can be able to clean the air and contribute towards reducing the effects of climate change that are brought about by increased carbon dioxide that we've looked at before. And even the intercropping, such that if one crop fails, then you have the other. And also intercropping can help to deal with the issues of micronutrient deficiencies, because then you're able to get a variety of foods that can be able to give you all the nutrients that you require. And then we also need to empower smallholder farmers, because we know that in this part of the world, like Africa, they contribute more than 70% of the food. So we need to empower them, and we need to, for example, be able to even show them ways they can be able to deal with safe ways of producing food, such that we deal with the aspects of climate change. We should be able to protect them, in terms of vulnerability, so that they can be able to deal with the issues of climate change. Then also, as I said before, agroforestry is very important because it also contributes to adaptation and mitigation measures. Because when we, for example, we do soil organic carbon restoration through practices like you're doing mulching, or for example, you're doing intercropping, then you're able to even conserve water in the soil, and even you're able to deal with issues like drought and even flooding. And as I said, also you're able to deal with the greenhouse gas emissions. And also you are able to reduce the aspect of, when we do industrial farming, there's a lot of agriculture, a lot of fertilizer that is used that also goes a long way to destroy our oceans and even contribute to climate change. But when we use agroecology, then we're able to deal with this. And a good example is the farmer-managed natural regeneration, which has been seen in the Sahel region, that actually helped to reverse land degradation and even boost yields. And the other thing about agroecology, it's very important also because it can contribute to our nutrition and health. Because when we have diversified farms, they provide us with nutrient-rich diets. So we can put together, for example, indigenous vegetables. We can have legumes there. And this can actually reduce our reliance on staple monocrops. And we have seen that the staple monocrops, for example, the maize, maybe the rice, we have seen that they are also losing some of their nutritional quality because of climate change. But when we come in, we have this diversified farming, then we are able to get all the micronutrients we require, and we will be able to deal with issues like stunting and so forth. And also, of course, that will also lower, exposure to some of these chemicals. And a good example is in Malawi, where they have home gardens, and studies have actually shown that that has helped to improve actually the intake of vitamin A in families because of these issues of using the green leafy vegetables in those farming. But when we talk about agroecology, it does not come without its barriers, but also as much as there are barriers, we also have opportunities in Africa. So some of the challenges that we see with agroecology, as much as we see that it's a very good practice that can help us in terms of adaptation and mitigation against climate change, is the lack of policy support. There are a lot of policies that are there, but some of these policies do not translate to practice. So we need to see that these policies also translate to practice, and that we have policies in place that even support the smallholder farmers, and even that support the growing, like agroforestry and all that. And also there's the issue of limited access to agroecological knowledge. Remember that, we are dealing with farmers, we are dealing with communities, and they will not know about the beneficial impact of agroecology unless they have this information. So that is why, for example, we need to do a lot of capacity building, and we do this a lot at FHRC. And also, we need, for example, national policies to come into place that can be able, like, for example, the Ethiopia's climate resilient green economy strategy, which, can help in terms of trying to advocate for aspects like agroecology. And as I come to my conclusion, I'd like to say that food and nutrition insecurity in Africa are worsened by climate change. And this leads to severe health impacts, the ones I've already talked about, be it overnutrition, be it undernutrition, and other negative impacts. So we need urgent and coordinated actions to be able to build resilient food systems and safeguard also public health. Because we have to have resilient food systems such that in case, for example, we have flooding, how do we bounce back? Do we bounce back better or worse than what before? And it is good that we bounce back better so that we can be able to take care of the public health of the population. And also, as I also said, we should invest in mitigation and adaptation strategies like agroecology that I've talked about. These are very crucial for sustainable solutions. And we should also invest in research to develop resilient crops, which can be able to stand, for example, harsh climatic conditions like drought, and also come up with better farming practices. And also, it's important that people understand about the linkage between climate, food, and health, because we have seen that these ones are all interlinked and they actually worsen each other. And also, we should involve communities in the discussions. Let us not speak to ourselves as scientists, but let us involve the communities and educate them on some of these sustainable practices. And a good example is agroecology that we have talked about. And we should actually empower them to make informed choices and even advocate for change. Let communities be at the forefront to advocate for change. Because remember, even at FHRC, as we say, we believe that communities have solutions to their own problems. So we work with them to come up with their own solutions, but they have to be at the forefront. We cannot be speaking to ourselves in the boardrooms or speaking to ourselves as scientists without involving these communities. And that is why, as I've talked before, FHRC, we work with communities, and I'm very glad that even ACOFE also works with communities. This is the best way of trying to come up with change in this phase of climate change. And therefore, I'd just like to leave you with a message of hope and empowerment. It's not all lost, okay? The challenges we face of climate change, because climate change, yes, is happening, but we can be able to do something. We have food insecurity and health problems. However, what history has shown us is that time and again, when we involve communities and they come together, they can actually overcome even the greatest obstacles. Think about that farmer somewhere, growing, doing intercropping in their farms and all that. Or even urban farmers in Nairobi who are growing food even in the rooftops of their houses. This is something that is happening. And these are not just like isolated stories. They are beacons of what is possible when, for example, we embrace sustainable practices and work together for a common cause. And each one of us has a role to play. So that means that whatever choice you're making, you have a role to play. Because remember, even as a bucket, if you have, maybe you're filling a bucket with a spoon, even if it takes 20 years, it will still fill. So don't say that, there's nothing I'm doing. So either you're working towards the right direction or the wrong direction. So whether you're advocating for policies that support sustainable agriculture, or you're participating in local community, for example, gardens, or simply just making more sustainable choices like not using plastic, going for more, like agroecology, you're making daily choices. And these collective actions of ours will actually make a difference. So remember, change doesn't start in the halls of government or the boardrooms of corporations. It starts in our homes, what you're doing there, our communities, and even in our hearts. And therefore, let us be change makers, let us be innovators and the leaders who will pave the way for a healthier, more sustainable future. So therefore, as we live here today, let us carry this spirit of collaboration and determination with us. And together, we can build a resilient food system, we can protect our environment, and we can ensure that we have a healthier future, not just for ourselves, but even for our children. Because I say that we don't have any other planet. This is the only place where we live. And thank you so much for your time and your attention and commitment to actually come for this webinar, even during a holiday. And let's go forward and inspire change. And let us do it a step at a time. And just like a seed needs care to grow into a tree, our bodies and our planet need small, consistent actions to thrive. So what you do today, whether you're planting trees like yesterday we're doing in Kamangu and Viwandani, or you're choosing nutritious foods, or you're reusing plastic, all this can actually shape the climate, our health, and even our nutrition for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Beatrice, for that powerful call to action and also the comprehensive overview about how food is such a powerful connector between the interlinked areas of climate and health, especially in the African context. And building off of one of the very strong messages that you shared even towards the end about the importance of community engagement, we're going to have the next presenter will speak about the overview of visual methods for meaningful community inclusion in climate and health interventions. I just posted Dr. Hashim's title of his presentation in the chat. And before handing it to Hashim, I'll just briefly introduce him from his bio. And Hashim is a medical doctor who brings a wealth of experience to the field of public health with over 7 years of dedicated research and practice at both subnational and national levels in Benin, along with more than 20 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. His diverse research portfolio encompasses critical areas such as climate's impact on health, the advancement of universal health coverage and social protection, maternal health, robust health system strengthening, adept process facilitation, and persuasive advocacy. He also holds 3 prestigious postgraduate degrees in addition to being a physician. He also has a dual Master of Science degree, one in public health and another in food and environment toxicology. So very closely aligned with what Dr. Beatrice has just presented. So I want to now invite Hashim to come in and give us this very interesting overview about the the visual methods in relation to community interventions. Welcome, Hashim.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Thank you so much, Dr. Beatrice, for this insightful presentation that allows us to see how food can be food. We all know food is important at the personal level, but at community level, at country level, at global level, it is a very strong political tool as well, and we need to empower our community, as she mentioned. I would like to introduce you to or remind you some of the ways we can do that. So I'm doing as part of research, but we can use those methods in interventions as well. And I can see the connection with all the value that Dr. Beatrice shared with us while she was connecting with agroecology and how we need to empower our community on those stuffs, and maybe also learn from them because they have knowledges that can also be useful in the process. But before moving forward, allow me to greet some friends of mine here that I'm seeing. I am currently, today is holiday in Benin, so bear with me if it is a little bit noisy around me. I'm not in office today. So greetings to Nathan and Nightingale, and to all the Akofi team that I can see here. I can see my son and Dabelin. So hi, greeting to all the others that I cannot mention for the great work that you are doing. And it seems that I'm becoming more and more Kenyan because I have a lot of friends and brothers and sisters from Kenya. So I would like to greet Dr. Liz and Dr. Alice that I've met a few months ago now, and I'm happy to see you here. I can see Dr. Tinashe as well, with whom we have been working for the past 12 months on climate and health, specifically educating health professionals across the continent on climate and health challenges and how we can integrate them into our practices. And last but not least, my greetings goes to Patricia that I've met, through works with AMREF, and I'm happy to meet her here again. So without further ado, I will try to be very concise because I know that time is running. I would like to introduce you to, or to remind you some participatory visual and digital methods that we can use in research and intervention. Those methods are important to take into account. They have their complexity, of course, but they are important to take into account because not everyone relates very well with texts. And most of the time when we want to implement an activity, a research project, or an intervention, we go to meet people, community that have a challenge, and we interact with them. We can interact with them with text. We can interact with them with discussion. But most importantly, we need to diversify the approaches, the medium that we use in that interaction. And these methods give that opportunity. So they are also important in the way that we approach, because when you go to the community, there is an inherent power imbalance. You come from probably the town with a lot of, let's say you understand French or English, and you are a little bit, you seem above them. So when you are using textual medium, it can still reinforce that pattern. Those are reasons why we can engage with these methods and use them in our way of communicating with our community. So I've mentioned many of these before. It tries to balance a little bit the power dynamic between researcher or people that conduct a project and the community that is benefiting from the project. And it also gives opportunity to go beyond the textual way of communicating and embed their perspective both at all the steps of the project. So even from the ideation, the idea of the project, to craft the problem, to identify it and frame it until its dissemination. So it is a powerful way to democratize knowledge and to connect with people that are from different backgrounds and different knowledge perspectives. So these methods have foundation within the field of ethnography. You have probably heard about participatory action research, or there are different ways to name these categories of methods. Some can name them citizen science, participatory research, etc. You can hear some words like concept like co-creation and co-creation, co-design. So all those terminologies most of the time comes to the same end, which is making sure that we break down barriers between researchers, project managers, and let's say community. So I will go directly on some methods that we can have in mind when we are designing or thinking about an intervention, a research. The first one will be photo voice. Then we can also, so photo voice basically is photo, using photo and using that medium to communicate with people. We can use films and video, and those methods are nowadays easier and getting easier. Not less complex, but easier in terms of availability of tools. Most of people have phones nowadays. There is a statistic that even say that in sub-Saharan Africa, people have much more access to phone than water, electricity, and toilet. So phone is a powerful tool that can help to use these kind of methods. We have digital storytelling, participatory GIS, and participatory digital archives and exhibition. I will quickly go through each of them very shortly, and if you want us to elaborate much more, or if you have experience on the use of them, you can also share with us, as we are not a small group, but a medium group, and we can share our experiences on those as well. I know that colleagues from HPRC are here, and they are also, I know that they have used these methods before, and they can also share their experience later on. So Photo Voice basically is a community-based participatory action research where people use camera to take photos on a topic. We are talking of food security. We can take food security as a topic. I will take it broadly. I will not narrow it down. And we want to understand what that means to a community, because the same thing can mean different thing to different people. So what does food security means to a particular community? We equip them, or they use their own cameras, and they can take picture of what that theme means to them. The goal being to raise awareness, to elicit discussion, to even communicate with policymakers. You know, it's easier to, the saying says that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So sometimes through picture of the environment, of the places they live, they can tell you with more precision what a particular topic or issue means to them than during a focus group discussion or during a survey process. So that's something that we can use. I'll go to the second one, which is basically using the same tools, but here, instead of having pictures, we are using video. So the videos are a little bit complex than pictures, but they can also be richer in contributing to have a deeper understanding of a particular subject. So we can let them do it themselves, but we can also do it together with them, or take the footages and edit together a particular video with them on a subject. And at the end, we have a product that can be used to advocate, they can relate to it better and maybe come back to it and process and share it easily. And it's also a kind of bank that's there for them that they can consult when needs is. So in this process, we can include them at all the stages of a filmmaking, from pre-production until post-production. The third one will be digital storytelling. So it's using the codes that we have mentioned in the first two methods, visual methods. It's using a different medium, different ways of communicating. And the goal is to advocate, to perform a social research, or to have a deeper understanding of something. But mostly it's for advocacy, because we have an issue that we understand and we want to craft it in a way that can be shared with different people. And we know that storytelling is a powerful way to communicate. Human brains relate and react better to stories than to any other forms of dialogue or communication. So we can use those tools to craft stories that can help with advocacy. The fourth one, which is so it's getting higher in complexity, is the Participatory Geographic Information System, GIS, that it's mostly used. So it's about mapping, basically GIS, about mapping, but this time doing the mapping with the community. So it's about mapping, it's about space, and we can use these to map some to map some information, and mostly you can think about it, and the applications is urban planning, urbanization, urban. We can maybe, for instance, map the places where we have slums, for instance, or places where people. So we can use the power of community participation and crowdsourcing to map certain information in the urban place. We use it in public health and mostly in land use, as we are talking of food. It can, for instance, be useful for mapping places in rural areas where people are doing agroecology, and how maybe the place explain success or failure, or explain why people are prone to adopt that technique in a particular places. So you can just be imaginative in how you use these tools and how useful they can be in your work. So the last one is the digital archives and exhibition, to create digital collections of documents, images, media. And after we collect them, we put them all in a database, in a repository that can either be digital or physical. So the goal here is to provide public access to materials, challenge dominant narratives, and involve community members as curators and contributors in a particular project. So so those are, in short, some methods that we can use in our work that we do with we are part of the community. We do with our fellows, but this comes with challenges, because it's easier to go from a survey and to analyze it within a software, a statistical software, or a qualitative software. But those data are not texts, so they have their own complexity in analysis. But those complexities are also opportunities that we do not necessarily have while we are doing the data, while we have collected data with text. So the opportunities that it provides is that we can still talk with the population, the community, from which we have collected data, to analyze data with us. So it moves away a little bit from the extractivism way of doing research or intervention, where we go there, we collect data, and we disappear. We disappear, and they don't see us anymore, and they don't know what happens to the data that has been collected. Here, they have opportunity to reflect on the data that they have collected, and can still give much more context to the analysis, and to why they collected those data particularly, and what it meant to them. So it allows the project manager, the researchers, to come with their tools, and it allows themselves, the community, to come with their tools and knowledge, and have a kind of a market of discussion and exchange, knowledge exchange, that they can share. So all these come with challenges, and the first one is the time that most of us, while doing projects, because we have time limits, we are a little bit reluctant to engage with these processes, these methods, because they are time consuming. Most likely, you need to train data collectors within community. You need to train them, workshop, discussion, etc., etc. And it can be time consuming. Not too. It needs a lot of some technology in terms of equipment. We've mentioned the phones. We've mentioned the phones and the cameras. You can go to some community where they do not have internet or they do not have electricity, etc., etc. So those are additional challenges that you may encounter when you are going through these processes. They are all those visual methods complex, ethically complex, because it involves navigating issues of power, representation, consent, and ownership. And sometimes it can be challenging because at the end, who owns the data and how you use them and how, etc. So those complexities are there. Institutions are comfortable with the traditional way of doing research, using textual or oral ways. But here it may be challenging if you need, for instance, the ethical approval to go through that process. And even those methods are not widely used by researchers. So even when you want to publish, you can have problems with the publishing process, with the reviewers, etc. The ethical review committee may not understand your work, and etc., etc. So it has those complexities. And the last one here that I have here is quality and rigor. So we are still doing a research work or intervention work. We want it to be of good quality. And here, unlike the textual and oral forms, we need to put in an extra effort to make sure that it is credible, it can be trusted by people that by everyone, actually, to make sure that it is of good quality and it can be used. So I will stop here, and thank you very much for having me. I hope this has been useful, and I'm looking forward to engage with you in the next stages of this discussion. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hashim, for such an insightful conversation surrounding participatory research. And yeah, I can't say more other than that we really just, the conversations with and presentation with Dr. Ffgg and what you brought in together, they just, they're really rich. And if we can just use the knowledge you shared with us to even put into practice, especially as researchers, what Dr. Ffgg is talking about, then we are many steps ahead. So looking forward to questions from the audience, but I want to also introduce a key player in these conversations that Dr. Hashim mentioned, and this is Dr. Goronga, Dr. Tinashe Goronga. Most welcome. I will just introduce him very, very briefly because I I won't give the entire profile, and we can share it later. So Dr. Goronga is a good friend and colleague, and he hails from Zimbabwe. And just to say a little bit, he is a medical doctor that has specialized in public health with and also working very much with social justice, health equity, and inclusive development. He is very passionate about integrated, sustainable, inclusive, and community-led approaches to achieving universal health and sustainable development. And on top of that, Dr. Tinashe is a commissioner for the Lancet Global Health Commission on People-Centered Care to Universal Health Coverage. So I will stop there because I know we are limited on time, and welcome you, Dr. Goronga, to share with us. Karibu, Daktari.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Joining you from Zimbabwe. I wish I was in Kenya right now because we are now in winter. It's getting cold. So yeah, and I have the hard task of really presenting after amazing like presentations. But I think what I'll try to do is to really tap onto the wisdom that the previous speakers have brought in, and really to think about now beyond how do we think about like the core benefits of climate change and health. How do we think about food security that has been mentioned, and how do we also think about the community engagement participatory methods that have been shared in the last presentation. And from this, I hope like as diverse stakeholders and communities, we can try to think about how we can also be actively involved in our various fields in terms of even whether involved in research or not, or whether involved in technical programming or not, or whether involved in grassroots efforts or not. So most of the work and that I do, or what I enjoy doing, is to really thinking about systems and structural thinking, like how can we do things differently. I always tell myself that the systems that we have in place today were created by fellow human beings like us, and over time we've continued to learn some of the benefits and some of the setbacks of the same systems. So instead of really being fixated on the same systems, we can try to think about how we can reimagine new systems. And I think particularly in this critical moment, particularly the current geopolitical moment, when you can see that like there's funding cuts, and when we're really thinking about climate change, we are the most affected region in the world, and it's going to amplify some of the social and structural determinants of health. So at the same time, so as a continent, we also have a window of opportunity to do things differently when you look at the stage that we are at development, and we can develop in a more sustainable way. And I think this should be led by us because it will benefit us more and our population more than ever. And I think that's one of the most important things um, that we should really think about, because when you heard about food security, the stunting, the impact on our population is long term. It's not just immediately when you're really thinking about malnutrition. And I should also touch on the benefits of really thinking of our processes, participatory processes, the long term benefit of participatory processes. So in this presentation, I'm trying to think about how do we rethink, be it designing our cities or communities. I'm using this as an entry point so that, because I was trying to see how I can have like a more concrete conversation. So this does not necessarily mean just really limiting it to cities, but really thinking about broadly our communities. And this really starts from thinking about the issues that have been discussed at the moment, where we are really placing people at the center. So the research methods that have been talked about in community engagement, or there are efforts to really bring back people at the center of every intervention of research, because research is not really much about publishing only. Research should also inform how we think about our cities, how we think about our communities, how we think about our future, how we think about addressing these issues. Even when you're really thinking about food security, we're really thinking about the determinants of food security in our communities in different spaces. And I loved the examples that were given of rooftop gardens and other initiatives that are there. And I think these are small initiatives that are being done by individuals and communities that we can think about and we can tip into when you're really trying to address some of the determinants of health and well-being in our cities, and really that will also benefit the climate in terms of the reduction of emissions. Yeah, so I think so. I'll start off by talking about how we can rethinking how we design our cities. Most of the time, I know most of our countries have are building new capital cities or building new communities, and it's a top down. But what I'm trying to challenge as communities is to start, and researchers and policymakers is to really start thinking about how do we decentralize all these processes again, like in terms of the participatory methods and approaches and everything that we are talking about in research. How do we also bring it uh, and also some of the grassroots efforts? How do we bring it into how we design our cities so that there's community ownership and there's also promotion of local economies? Because this is like quite essential in addressing some of the um, determinants of health, but also towards having resilient communities and resilient cities that can withstand some of the shocks that come in with climate change, and also really thinking about how it can be inclusive for everyone in terms of, so some of the things that come up in terms of like really having such decentralized and participatory methods is really thinking about what ideas can come in from people and how can those ideas translate to livable cities, because you're now bringing in people and their lived realities and their experiences. So the solutions that are coming in are solutions that will address realistic issues, and they also bring in new innovations that can boost local economies, that can contribute to decentralization, improve accessibility, and some of the long term benefits of those around reduction of emissions, and also in terms of NCDs, non-communicable diseases, sorry, that are coming up. Then another thing to think about is when we're really thinking about the core benefits, I think one of the most important thing that we have to center around climate change, and I think which is quite important. I was looking at some of the videos Nightingale was posted when of of the event that happened, was it yesterday, where we have and I think those efforts that also put like environmental conservation and promotion of biodiversity are quite important. So these are the pictures here are from Zimbabwe. So I stay in a community called Monavel. So this community has a wetland that they conserve. And one of the biodiversity there is incredible in terms of the bird species, the plant species. And recently I've been keen to learn about some of the herbal properties of the plants that are found there, and some of the health benefits, nutritional benefits. I think like the presentation earlier on talked about the importance of the minerals that are missing in highly processed food, and some of the things that comes in terms of biodiversity conservation is conservation of our indigenous species that unfortunately for countries like Zimbabwe, which are settler colonies, where we over time we had forgotten about them as we adopted the introduced diets. But these coming back to these indigenous edible plants, indigenous food systems have have incredible health benefits in terms of unlocking some of the some of the micro and the essential nutrients that we need for healthy population. So sometimes we have to center it in terms of how can our need for food and sustenance as humans, and also for health, also be part of the conservation efforts and awareness of other plants and animals and other things. So we are not placing ourselves out of the ecosystem, but we're thinking about how do we interact in the ecosystems. So these are some of the citizen initiatives that are there that we hope would promote more initiatives at a larger scale, be it international um or even at a continental level. And I think this is just sort of a brief overview of, for example, if you look at specifically wetlands benefit, how they benefit. If you look at, because wetlands are, when you look at them, like for example, as an example, like they have far-reaching benefits around really, like for example, preventing the impacts of climate change. We talked about droughts, we talked about flooding and all those extreme events. Wetlands play in a critical role in preventing floods, and also in storing carbon and enhancing well-being and green spaces for mental wellness. So these are some of the far-reaching benefits that you see that are of benefit to the climate, and they're also benefits to our health. And I think when we really try to push like in to tell everyone that this ultimately benefits us, this ultimately benefits our health and not just the environment. I think that's very important. But more importantly, I also try to not to dwell much on human health, because I think we have destroyed the planet by a lot by centering humans, but not really thinking about our entire ecosystem and biodiversity and everything else. So this is another sort of example of some of the things I think that we touched on earlier around food security, where I know like they've right now in Zimbabwe we have a lot of sustainable living spaces that are coming up on WhatsApp, on different platforms, where people are discussing like in terms of how do we design food first? I have a Zimbabwean friend who's also based in Kenya. I went to his food forest, and it was incredible to see how he's turned the yard into a mini food forest, really emphasizing on indigenous plants and fruits. And not only that, and you were saying it's his cost in terms of buying food, and we know the benefits of trees and biodiversity to not only humans but also to the bird life, to everything. So we have to really think about that in terms of when we're thinking about the future for our citizens, the opportunity that we have to do things differently in our communities when we're rethinking. Then another core benefit that I'll touch on quickly because I'm conscious of time is really thinking about redesigning our cities. These are two events that are happening. This event is happening tomorrow. So what has happened is the Harare Bicycle Day, one of the kids, it's another thing that is has been a result of community-led initiatives. So there's been a community-led initiative around open streets that are where they are blocking streets in neighborhoods, and they'll have cycling days, skating days. And over the past year, it has grown. So now it's becoming a citywide event. It started off being a residential event, but now it's becoming a citywide event. Where tomorrow, I think we might have the first biggest sort of cycling event where people are cycling from different parts of the city. So when you see such community-led initiatives growing, it also shows that you, we all have a part to play in thinking about our cities and thinking about our countries in terms of how they are designed, in terms of where we live, and in terms of really influencing that positive change that's there. And this benefits us because we are now promoting active lifestyle. I remember, like there was a mention earlier on about the increase in obesity, and because of the refined foods that we're eating. So active lifestyles are now becoming more important than ever in terms of when really thinking about addressing some of the non-communicable diseases. Then I think I'll touch last on the aspects of air quality and uh, like not only trees help in purifying air, but also have to be conscious about how we pull our pollution and our own pollution. So I put this poster because the person who runs this is inspires me. She's been running waste management meetings for 14 years. I went to the first waste management meeting as a medical student, and people were like, "What are you doing here? You're a medical student." But I also started to realize that time I knew the importance of really thinking about how all this interconnect. So imagine she's been running this for 14 years and it's been growing. We now have most stakeholders involved, which we're bringing everyone involved in waste management, trying to think how can we approach our waste as humans. Because as I said, we are part of the we are actually the main cause of the problems in terms of our waste and our lifestyles. So we're really thinking about how do we then, and it's impacting our health. So we're killing ourselves in the process. So some of these things around some of the core benefits is when you really address or reduce some of the greenhouse emissions, it also means our air is cleaner. It also means we're reducing emissions. When we're deliberate about be it individual lifestyles or at collective or community level in terms of waste reduction, and or it also means that we're introducing less pollutants to the environment, and that benefits are real. So yeah, in summary, I think what I've been trying to really think about or like trying to bring in this conversation is around the importance of 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 really thinking about the benefits of really centering the awareness of our planet for us as humans. As much as we are selfish and greedy and we have all these characteristics that are messing up the world, we have an opportunity to do things differently and to really think about different sectors that are coming in from research, from community organizers, from people who are doing differently, and how can we come together and how do we bring in the skills that are, and I think as academics, as researchers and policymakers, as different people, we also have to think about how do we bridge the gap that's there, how do we connect ordinary people to the processes. So like from the mention that what the research methods that were mentioned earlier in terms of community engagement should not be just before proposals, but we have to start thinking about how can we come up with participatory methods to redesign and rethink our cities was and our settlements that and centering planetary awareness and not just our awareness but planetary awareness, and also really appreciating the overall benefit to all of us. Thank you so much.
Dr. Goronga, thank you so much for that insightful conversation and presentation. And, I'm just thinking about, well, I guess I can make a quick comment because you're the last speaker. So the wetland question, it is a big question for me because there's so many wetlands that are now being repurposed, and it is important for us in our communities to really understand why we need to retain these wetlands instead of repurposing them. So that's just something that rose up for me because in my life in both Kenya and Liberia, that's one thing that I've seen and that has touched me deeply. So, but asante sana, and I will give the platform back to Nathan so that he can move us forward to the next level.
Thank you, Tinashe, and thank you, Hashim. We had some questions that were pasted in the chat earlier. So one of them we'll just circle back to is from Francis Munyao. And the question in brief or summary form was asking about how, given the unequal impact of climate change on vulnerable populations in Africa, we can see about having frameworks that are not only environmentally sound, but also deeply rooted in social justice, human rights, and intergenerational equity of particular importance within the African context, given the proportion of the population that are youth and children, and also looking at other very prominent and profound issues like loss of language, urbanization, and even how much that is tied to indigenous knowledge and biodiversity. So I'll open that question up to our three speakers, Tinashe, Hashim, and Beatrice, and welcome additional questions in the chat as we proceed with the Q&A and discussion portion of our meeting.
Hi, Nathan. I don't know. Maybe I can take that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, and I think I would like to tie that one down with, I also saw another question on GMOs. So I will start, and my fellow speakers can also contribute. Yes, I think it's high time that whatever frameworks we are coming up with, like in research, we are talking about social justice. This is where we need to involve the community. We need to make sure that whatever that we are coming up with, is it really like, looking at our communities, or we're just looking at how much, we are earning as researchers. And if I could just tie that one down to the methods that Hashim has talked about, where we actually like involving the citizens in coming up with their solutions, and also just making sure that whatever we are coming up with is human-centered, and we are making sure that we are also making sure that we are also looking at preserving biodiversity or not. And if I can tie that one very closely down to the GMO issue, yes, I know we are talking about climate change and what we can do and all those things. And GMOs have come in, and they come up with the like crops which are maybe resistant to drought, to stress, and all those things. But the or other thing that we should also ask ourselves is about how they have the ecological impacts we're talking about how they can actually even cause the loss of biodiversity. And also, like, when it comes to even who controls them, we have all these big multi-corporate organizations controlling them, which really loses the sovereignty of our people to decide what they need to grow, and exactly how they're supposed to grow it. And also, it also even touches on the on issues of equity in access, and because when you look at it, it also tied down very closely to even sovereignty, because of the issues of even like the high costs. Means that even the farmers that we have talked about, who control about 70% or more of our production, are not able to actually like afford those particular seeds and plants. And also, when you look at them, they're not really like tailored to our local climatic issues and all those things. And when we promote them, that actually also touches on the issues of sovereignty and all that. So I know it's a big debate even about the issue of even sharing seeds and all that. And I know that even in this country, it has been criminalized. So it's a big debate. But whatever that frameworks we're coming up with, we have to look at, are we promoting equity? Are they human-centered? Are we promoting social justice? So that's very, very important, even as scientists, as we come up with whatever, approaches that we are using for our work. Thank you so much. And I think I hand it over to the other presenters to also take it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beatrice. Maybe Hashim, if you would like to weigh in first, and then to Tinashe.
I have nothing to say for now. I'll just let Tinashe proceed.
Yeah. I think I just have a quick comment, and actually I agree with what Dr. Beatrice mentioned, and just emphasizing the importance of really thinking about social justice and health equity, and even thinking about how human rights, and really start to think about how are we contributing to the problem, and how are we contributing to resolving the problem that's there, and having a critical look at some of the policies that we are passing, in terms of, are they beneficial long term to the community, or they disempower the community. our economy, because at times a lot of these conversations around intergenerational equity and really thinking about human rights have to be placed in broader systems that we're a part of. Which is why I think it's important to start really thinking about how we redesign our economic system. Because if you look at the policies, for example, around the seed, I'll use that as an example. It's not something that's been pushed in Kenya only, but in different countries where they are trying to criminalize the exchanging of seeds and all. And if it's rooted in really promoting a capitalist system that's thinking more about profits and not wellness, and sort of that worsens also the deep-rooted inequities that are there. So I think there's this term called structural competency, which says like understanding of structural issues. I think it's not something that should be limited to health professionals or a specific sector, but it should be everyone should have, as in whatever professional that you are in, be it you're in research, be it you're in engineering, be it you're in, because I think addressing a lot of these issues would need multi-sectorial and interdisciplinary approaches, and all these disciplines have to understand the key justice issues that have been raised by Dr. Beatrice, and also that have come up like in the conversation now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tinashe. And just to do a quick time check, we try to strike a balance between the duration of the meeting and the richness and quality of the discussion that we can have. We are a bit over time, so what we'll aim to do is to conclude in approximately 5 minutes. Our goal as a Kofi is to whet your collective appetite and hope that we can take up the collective responsibility and opportunity to see how to carry forward this conversation, which, just to highlight a few of the areas where there is certainly more room for improvement, and one of those is language access and equity. So even looking within the African context, we're interested in trying to work with Francophone African speakers and leaders so that we can envision in the near future co-hosting and co-creating content that is intentional about inclusivity, including on the important category of language. So we have one question that was recently posted in the chat, and for purposes of time, I think we will conclude with that one. And before we fully finish, we will talk about a few opportunities for next steps, including the next First Friday Global Gathering, where we will be very focused in the conversation and presentation content about communities, culture, and language, aligning with the World Kiswahili Day in early July. So the question is from Arthur Moyori, and he's a student studying climate smart agriculture. He had two questions. Number one, how can African countries effectively integrate climate and health co-benefits into national food system strategies? So it looks like directly tied to Dr. Beatrice, so maybe you can weigh in on that. And then question number two, what role can community-led approaches play in ensuring that these solutions are both contextually credible and scalable across diverse agroecological zones? So also touching on the specifics related to food, nutrition, and agriculture. So I think I want to invite Dr. Beatrice to come in first with these two interconnected and important questions, and then see if Dr. Hashim and Dr. Tinashe have more to add from your experiences about this question. Over to you, Dr. Beatrice.
Yes, thank you, Nathan. I would just like to be very brief about this and just say that, what African countries really need to do is to make sure that whatever that they are doing, communities should be involved. And this is tying down to, up to like what Dr. I'm trying to remember his name, Goronga. His name is difficult. His name is difficult. They should be able to co-create, solutions with community, co-design, because remember, at the end of the day, African governments should know that whatever that they're doing is actually trying to address community problems. And they have to understand, because as I said in my presentation, these communities, they're just not sitting there and they're not doing something. There's something they are doing in their small corners that has helped them to be able to be resilient and all those things. Those are things that we need to actually find out. So work with the communities to solve their own problems, and whatever that is working, then scale it up. So we should work with community and we should not, we should create those solutions right from down there, then scale them elsewhere. So it's working with the community all the way. That's what I like to say in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll just quickly touch on the issue around contextual credibility and scaling in diverse agroecological zones, and also thinking about it sort of beyond food security and agriculture. I think there's also, coming back to issues, to the questions around, to the conversation around system, I think there's also room for just learning sometimes without uh, let me find a way of phrasing most. Like, one of the most important, I think one of the most important things that we have lost over time is around diversity of thoughts and diversity of doing things, and also the diversity of solutions that come with that, particularly because of indigenous knowledge systems, for example, in their diversity were considered inferior, and one knowledge system there was hierarchies of knowledge systems over the other. So I think one of the issues that we have to think about, particularly when thinking about contextual credibility, is sometimes there's also should be room for more like a plural pluralist system, like a system where we can have multiple solutions and multiple ways that are that are hyper local, and also they also things that because they are things that may not be able to be imposed on another group because of culture, because of other values in there. So I think also appreciating those nuances when you're really thinking about context, like that sometimes the drive should not just be about scaling up, but should also be about there's beauty in learning. Then from learning, then we can see in other contexts, how does it happen without necessarily copying and pasting it? Because I mean, if you really analyze a lot of some of the NGO interventions that have happened over time, and some of the critique of it was sometimes some interventions would be imposed in certain contexts where it do not work, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that solution didn't work initially where it was tried. So I think there should be room for allowing, like, sort of a pluralist approach to things, so that we can really take into consideration the specific context of be it different regions or different particular communities, and their characteristics.
Thank you, Dr. Beatrice and Dr. Tinashe. Any thoughts on these two questions, Dr. Hashim?
So I really have nothing much to add to what Dr. Tinashe and Dr. Beatrice has shared. So no, so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hashim. So we want to look to conclude in the next couple of minutes, but just want to acknowledge the other ACOFI team members who have been working mostly silently and behind the scenes to help make today's webinar a success. There's James and Mason and Dominic, and also Hillary. And want to say that we're deeply humbled and deeply grateful to all of the participants, and especially our wonderful speakers, for the rich knowledge and also forward-facing ideas that you've shared about this important question of how we can bridge theory and practice and integrate climate and health, not just in Africa, but also globally. So we want to briefly mention some of the next steps other than in a little less than 1 month. On the 4th of July, we'll have the next First Friday Global Gathering, but also in 2 months, we have a conference and a climate week that as a COFI, we are co-hosting together with Masai Mara University. And of particular relevance to today's discussion, we are planning to have a Healthy Foods Festival that will very much try and center the importance of the knowledge about food production and meal preparation, and even the cultural significance of gathering together as diverse community members who all share one home on planet Earth. And otherwise, we are committed to working together with our friends, allies, partners, and collaborators around the world to try and ensure that we don't just describe the problem, but in fact that we are able to join together and be part of the solution for a hopeful and bright future. So with the First Friday Global Gathering model, we do have a concept note and would be happy to share with anyone who's interested in partnering with a COFI to do this presentations and community building, where in short, our theory of change in a bit of a child-friendly framing is abbreviated MOANA, that we are intentionally trying to develop meaningful opportunities for action, networking, and advancement. So that's no small task, but with meetings and rich discussions like the one today, we feel like this is an important step to opening up these spaces so that people are able to connect and share and grow together. So once again, we thank you all for taking time to be with us today. Our email address is info@akofi.org. Maybe you can post that in the chat, Knight or James, so that in case you have feedback or suggestions about ways that we can enhance this discussion and do even better, especially collectively as diverse stakeholders all moving towards a shared vision. So with that, I want to open it up to see if anyone has any last words to share. And if not, I want to invite Nightingale to come in for last words, including a grounding as we move towards our families, friends, and homes after being together virtually. Thanks, everyone. Over to you, Knight.
Thank you, Nathan. I just want to see if our presenters may have any last word before we close. And I'll start with you, Dr. Hashim, if you have any last words.
So I would like to recognize and appreciate the work that you guys are doing with Akofi in Kenya and beyond. The people that you are gathering, the actions that you are taking. And I'm leaving with a word that a sentence that I'm taking from Nathan. Let's not just describe the problems. So I feel like you are working the talk, and I just want to say thank you to you for doing the work, but also making sure that you are not alone. I can see that you are building collaboration across sectors and disciplines and countries and language. So I would like to appreciate that and send all my energy from Benin to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hashim. Very much appreciated And we look forward to learning more from you and also working together, continuing the work together. And greetings to those where you are that are caring for the same things as we are. Over to you, Dr. Goronga, for any last words.
Yeah, thank you. No last words, just grateful for this opportunity and this conversation, and really excited about the exchange of ideas across countries. I think we should continue doing this as a continent. Thank you. And thank you for this great initiative.
Yeah, thank you too. And we're waiting for you here in Kenya. You're long overdue for coming to see us again. So, and to you, Dr. Ffgg.
Yes, thank you so much, Nightingale. And to all the viewers who have been here today, I'm still very grateful that you made time for us to have this webinar today. And, for us to have run into this time of the evening, it shows how much dedication you have and how much you care about this planet, about our nutrition, about our food security. And I'll keep on saying that we have to take care of this planet to feed our children. We have to take care of this planet for us to be healthy for tomorrow and to give, the best legacy to our children tomorrow. And I'll also say that if we destroy this planet, we have nowhere else to go. We have no other kitchen where we're going to feed our children from. May we preserve this planet so that we can be able to feed our children to be healthy and for us to be happy with the legacy that we leave for our children. Thank you so much for giving us this audience and for your time this evening. Thank you so much. Enjoy your evening and even the rest of the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ffgg, and looking forward to many more, especially since you're just around the corner. So, asante sana. We really, I think what I want to say also is that let's think, just like Dr. Ffgg closed us up, let's think about the legacy that we leave. Let's think about the children that are here now and those that are the people that are yet to come. And in closing, I will want to truly thank those who have come before us, those who preserved this planet for us to be able, for it to be habitable and for us to live within it. And it is my goal to continue doing that very thing to the best of my ability. And I know that collectively we are. So thank you very much, asanteni sana. And we will see you again same time the next first Friday is when we have the next session. So just look out for what is to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And
Bye-bye.
goodbye.